Welcome to a special edition of the TimCo Retail Manager course. We built the TimCo Retail Manager application to simulate what a real-world application would look like so that we can use it as a learning testbed. One of the big areas of focus was on upgrading to .NET Core. We're now at that point. In this video, we're going to go the next step, which is upgrading our back-end class library to .NET Standard 2.0. Just like with our front-end class and class library, we're taking it to .NET Standard instead of .NET Core because of the fact that we can upgrade in stages. And so our .NET Framework API can still call our .NET Standard class library project. So that's what we're doing. Now, for those of you who are Patreon members, the $5 per month level or higher, don't forget to head over to Patreon to get today's source code. This will also give you a chance to check out that special bonus offer for Patreon members during this upgrade process. Mailing list members, you should have gotten a special offer already this week. If you aren't on the mailing list, sign up using the link in the description. Another special offer will be going out later this week. Finally, I'm launching this series as a course on IamTimCorey.com based on your feedback. You can purchase the entire course, including all the videos in the series, the source code from each video, fully downloadable content, and more. The course will cover everything through the upgrading of .NET Core. If you've been a Patreon member paying for the source code each week, you're going to be getting a special offer, a really great deal on this course because you've already paid towards it. And if not, you'll have to pay a little bit more, but that's only fair. So either way, you'll get everything all at once. Check out the link in the description for more information. Okay, let's dive back into our source code. In this case, we're going to our API, and we're going to our TRM data manager.library. Note again, we have a packages.config, and that packages.config has Dapper in it, and that's it. Now again, we're not going to delete that file. We're going to keep that here, and instead, we're just going to start upgrading our library. Now, one thing we didn't talk about before, but if you had any other references, so if you had referenced anything else, that reference as well needs to be brought over. But in the case of our class libraries so far, there's been no references to other libraries in them. Okay, let's right-click and say Unload Project. Right-click and say Edit the CSproj file. Control-A if you aren't sure about this upgrade process, or if you have questions, or really if you're just doing this for the first time with one of your projects. Copy and paste this into Notepad so you have something to look back at in case you have questions later. But in our case, we're just going to delete it and we're going to start over. Project SDK equals Microsoft.net.sdk. Make sure you spell it correctly. And inside there we have a property group. And inside there we have a target framework. And the target framework is .NET Standard 2.0. Now I can close this project. I'm not going to this time. Last time I did. I want to show you the difference. If I right click and say Reload Project, it's going to give me an error here. It says the document CSproj is already open. Do you want to close it? This is a leftover artifact from .NET Framework. This is part of the tooling that's now going to change as we move away from .NET Framework projects. So I say yes, go ahead and close it. It closes it and opens it right back up because now a .NET Core or .NET Standard project can be updated or opened even when it's running. Now I did have Dapper installed, so let's manage NuGet packages and let's install Dapper. Now the version of Dapper was 1.6. Currently, Dapper version 2.0.30 is out. I don't know if that's going to cause any breaking changes for me. A major version entails breaking changes, but I'm not sure if there are changes that are going to affect me or not. So here's what I'm going to do. This again is one of those, try it and see what happens. I'm going to install the latest stable version, 2.0.30. If something breaks, I'll revert back to 1.6. So install this. And now let's do a build on my class library. The build failed. Let's look at why. It says SQL client does not exist in the namespace system.data. And then also we get the duplicate attribute entries. Remember last time we went to this assembly info and deleted the file. If you don't want to do that, if you want to keep that file, let's do that by saying edit project. And we'll make a modification in this. Notice the item group for Dapper now. That's kind of cool. But then in here, we're going to make one more change. We're going to say generate assembly info is false. Now that's not in IntelliSense currently. It may be at some point, but for right now it's not. So generate assembly info and set it to false. That will stop the assemblyinfo.cs from generating automatically, which means the system will use ours instead. Now if we rebuild this, we still have an error, but just one error instead of those 7 errors. That resolved the assembly info error. The type or namespace SQL client does not exist in the namespace system.data. Okay, well we can take care of that by right-clicking on dependencies, say manage NuGet package, and let's look for system.data.SQL client. Again, this is one of those, it's an add-in instead of it being a built into the framework. So let's install the latest version, the stable version of 4.7. I'll accept that. And now let's do a rebuild again on our library. And now we have these 3 errors, and it's Configuration Manager again, our old friend. Well, right-click and say Manage NuGet Packages, and it's system.configuration.configuration manager. We go ahead and install the latest stable version of that at 4.6. And now let's do a rebuild again. And it's successful. Now you may get the same error as before. We're going to find out in just a minute by hitting Start. Again, design time errors have been resolved. We still have to look out for runtime errors. So here we go. It's loading up in theory. Let's find out if it's actually going to work this time. It seems to, but let's make some calls. So log in. And it says, hey, I couldn't load the file or assembly system.data.SQL client. Interesting. And it says that one of the dependencies cannot be found. Okay, that sounds an awful lot like the error we got before. So you have system.data.SQL client version 4.6, and that's erroring out here. We try to load up our get by user ID. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Notepad. I'm going to open it off screen for a minute. I'm going to go to View Details, and I'm going to copy the stack trace, just the value. Then I'm going to open up Notepad. I'm going to paste it in. This is a little easier to read. So let's do a word wrap here. And it says, okay, that's the top level error, and that's at SQL data access line 31. Okay? Then I come over here. I'm going to close this out. I'm going to stop this and go to SQL data access line 31, which is the close right here. So it's having a problem in this, it seems like. But let's do this. Let's start off by putting a breakpoint at the beginning. And let's launch it again and see if we can even get into this load data method at all. All right, so I've got my login form. I hit login, and it doesn't even get there. So it's saying, I can't get there. I have a problem with the SQL client that you're using. Now, it could be SQL client, or it could be that configuration manager. Which one is it? Not sure. Again, let's find out by going to references here and just seeing if we have a reference to the SQL client, which I don't believe we do. So it was system.data.SQL client. So let's do this. Again, not my best solution, Not the one I wish would work, but let's try system.data.sql client and install that on our API itself. Again, the 4.7 version. Am I happy about this? No, but let's see if this works or gets us a little further. So it's loading up now. The APF loads very quickly, so it's just waiting on the API. I hit login, and now it says could not load file or assembly Dapper version 2.0. I wondered if that'd be a problem. So let's do this. Let's go back to our library. Again, this is very trial and error. Manage NuGet packages. We have installed Dapper, but let's roll back to 1.60.6, which I believe, if you look at our config file, we're at 1.60.1. You know what? It probably wouldn't hurt to go to 01, but let's do 1.60.6. Just to be sure. Let's try that first. Try the highest version you think you can. So we're going to move back to that version. Let's start again and see what errors we get this time. Okay, we're going to log in and could not load the file or assembly Dapper version 1.60.0.0. Can't find the file specified. Is that really the case? Let's go up to our packages.config up here, and there's a lot of them here. There's no Dapper installed at all, so that shouldn't be the problem. So is that really the problem, or is it the same problem we had before? So let's do this. Let's go to our TRM Data Manager, the API. I go to References and say Manage NuGet Packages, and I am going to say system.configuration.configuration manager. We have not seen any errors about this. But I'm going to install it at the API level and see if that solves some other problems I have. Because we had that problem before in the front-end UI. And we've learned from that maybe that's going to cause a problem somewhere else. The error message is similar, it's just using a different name for a different package. And no, that was not the issue. I'm wondering if it's maybe not bringing Dapper over into our build. I'm wondering if that's the problem. Now, this is just a test. This is not something I want to do long term. But let's add a reference to Dapper in our API. Again, this is not a long-term thing. This is just a short-term solution. Okay, so I'm going to add a 1.6 reference, and I'm going to start this again. Once it starts up here, I will log in. Log in. It's paused here at the connection string. That's interesting because now I got a breakpoint here. It's actually reading that properly. And it seems to be working. So if I go to user management, I can see Tim is an admin, a cashier. I can add a manager role to Tim. That works. I can remove a role. That works. So it looks like everything is working correctly now that I added Dapper on my API side. That's not a great long-term solution, but it does give me a clue as to why we're having these problems. It looks as though what's happening is it's not bringing over the dependent DLLs that it needs to when we are building our library. It looks like it's saying, I'm going to expect that the Dapper DLL will be in the bin directory for our .NET Framework project, and it's not. And so what's happening is it's saying, I can't find this file. Therefore, you have to install it on the front-end project, or the API project, or before it was the WPF project. So it looks like we have to bring over those settings just because it's looking for a DLL that's not there, because it's not building it in or it's not bringing it over. So we have a temporary solution that works, and we also have an idea of why long-term this is happening? We think it's because it's not bringing the DLL over into the output bin directory from our library. There's something wrong going on there. And so we know we have a direction to investigate to fix this for the long term. But for the short term, this is now working. So these are the type of problems you're going to have during the upgrade process. Some of this may have to be artifacts with the .NET framework. So if we moved our front end to .NET Core, it may be we can remove the Dapper reference. We might not need it anymore because it might work with .NET Standard and our .NET Core API. So it may be it's just a transient issue. Or it may be that it's a configuration issue in our .NET Standard project that we need to tweak or change. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this on a list of things to look into, but I'm not going to fix it now. And the reason I'm not going to fix it now is because if you try and fix every problem, first of all, you may run into situations where you're fixing a problem that's only a problem until you upgrade the rest of the stuff. Or you may find that you're spending an awful lot of time fixing these problems that you've got a solution for, it's not the best solution, and that slows down or stalls your overall upgrade process, which causes more pressure on you to do other things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this right here. I'm going to put it on my to-do list, pretty high priority, to find out why these DLLs are not being copied over properly and see if I can't get those removed. But I'm going to leave it alone. Okay? So until the rest of the upgrade process happens or until I get some free time, I'm going to leave it alone. And instead, what I'm going to do is move on to the rest of the upgrade. Get it to work and then address those issues. Okay? So lastly, I'm going to delete this packages.config. We don't need it anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the delete key here. And yes, I want to delete this permanently. And now I can check in my changes. So these are the changes that I have worked on in this video. And I'll say upgrade front end library to .NET Standard. And I'll go ahead and commit those and push them up to our repository. So that's it for the upgrade of this library. In our next video, what we're going to do is upgrade our API. So that'll be a little bit more tricky one. And if you thought this was tricky, that gets a little trickier. But we're going to upgrade our API, and from there, after that, we'll upgrade our WPF project. So that's kind of the order of what's coming next. Okay? But until then, thanks for watching. And as always, I am Tim Corey.